What's the deal with airplanes lately? They're supposed to be in the air, and yet they're always running into the ground.
Nick, 86 people have died this year.
Oh. Yeah, what's up with that?
Why are you covered in water?
Oh, I have a drinking problem. My mother texted me yesterday asking how much snow we got up here in Toronto, and also if I heard about that Delta airline flight that did a barrel roll on the runway. You know, there's been a lot of aviation disasters over the last year or so I figured it'd be fun to go over all the different incidents and what their causes were. Official causes for the crashes usually take a year or two to come out, but the preliminary info's out there. So let's go through a chronological timeline of all the major aviation incidents since between now and 2024. 2024 took off with an Alaska Airlines flight on a Boeing 737 MAX. It took off on January 5th from Portland, Oregon, destined for Ontario, California, not to be confused with Ontario, Canada. Shortly after takeoff, the door decided to take off, and then the cabin was depressurized as a result. They had to make an emergency landing, and this was the first of many Boeing scandals that would bring them into the news that year. No deaths, 3 injuries. Hopping on over to February, we had a Hoppa jet take off from Ohio, Skibbity Riz, destined for Naples, Florida. Unfortunately, just before getting to its destination, both engines died and it was forced to make an emergency landing on the highway. While attempting to land on the Florida interstate, the plane collided with an SUV and then a truck, erupted into flames. Both pilots died and overall there was 2 dead, 4 injured. Then at the end of March, we had Safe Air's unsafe landing in South Sudan. Failing to live up to its name, a Boeing 727 cargo flight operated by Safe Air Company landed short of the runway in South Sudan, colliding with another plane that ironically did the exact same thing just a month prior. Only 1 injury. Honestly, I just wanted to include this because I thought it was funny that a company called Safe Air had an unsafe landing. Actually, now that I look at this, Safe Air Company is currently on the blacklist of airlines banned from flying in the EU for being an unsafe airline. Safe Air is literally unsafe. Next up, at the end of July, we had Gillette Razor Company's politically correct jet crash in Wyoming. All 7 on board were killed, including 3 members of a gospel quartet. The crash occurred while they were en route to join a Gaither Homecoming specialty cruise. What? I don't know. Anyway, they all died. At the beginning of August, a pilot foolishly followed the advice of commenters begging them to come to Brazil, and they touched down in Brazil violently into a suburb of Sao Paulo. There was 58 passengers and 4 crew on board, and all 62 died. No homes were struck, which is good. On November 25th, DHL had a cargo flight do the same as the South Sudan incident, where they came up short on a runway coming down in Lithuania, crashing again into a home. 1 person did die, but it was inside the plane. No one on the ground died, so there was 3 injuries and 1 death here. I also want to take a detour and mention one of the other big avionic incidences of 2024. It was all of the drone sightings too across the US, starting in New Jersey. It ran from mid-November to around December of 2024, by which point everyone lost the dopamine for it and it mysteriously went away. We'll get to why, but that should give you an indication of what was causing it. Then, December 25th, 2024, we had Azerbaijan Airlines take off from Baku inbound for Grozny, Russia. Unfortunately, they were diverted en route because of the Ukraine war conflict and attempted an emergency landing in Kazakhstan across the Caspian Sea, which, upon a final approach to the airport, the plane tragically hit the ground and separated into 2. There were 67 people aboard, 38 were killed, but somehow 29 survived. And when I say somehow, I genuinely do mean somehow. Like, my God, watch this. Like 40% of people on this flight survived. Almost half the plane survived this. How in the hell? Then on December 28th, Archad and I were actually personally affected. I got to the airport early that day, and my flight back to Toronto was canceled. They rescheduled me for a flight 3 days later, mind you, so I had to naturally refund it and then book a new one through Air Canada. God help you if you ever have to fly Air Canada. Do not bring a check bag because they will lose it and you will be naked. Fuck Air Canada. Thank Christ, I didn't have a check bag that day. But anyway, why was my flight canceled, you may ask? Well, 18 hours prior, there was a big clusterfuck kerfuffle on the runway when a plane lost its landing gear touching down. No one died or anything, but I just wanted to mention it because of this hilarious video that came out of the incident. Just look at that iPad kid. The airplane's violently sliding asunder, fucking listing on its side, running down the runway. You can see literal flames illuminating the kid's face, and yet he doesn't even look up through the streaks of terror filling the air, doesn't even give a gander to what's going on. He's just totally locked into that goddamn iPad. Fucking kids these days, right? Joe Cracker. And then finally, to end off the year, we got the Jeju Air Boeing 737 touching down violently in Muon, South Korea. After touching down deep down the runway, a Jeju Air flight overshot and smoked a wall, turning into a fireball and killing all but 2 aboard, 179 dead. One of the deadliest commercial aviation incidents since the dawn of the millennium. And that's 2024. 2025 was coming in hot. Starting January 29th, an American Airlines flight collided with a Black Hawk helicopter above the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Temperatures in the water were less than 2 degrees Celsius, so the likelihood of surviving was extremely slim, and unfortunately, none of the 64 people aboard the jet, nor any of the 3 aboard the Black Hawk helicopter were recovered alive. This is the first fatal commercial aviation incident in the U.S. since 2009. It would not be the last. River flood warning! On January 31st, a medical flight in Philly took off and crashed shortly after. It was a Learjet operated by a medical facility taking some sick kids somewhere when they smashed into a suburb just shortly after taking off from the runway, leaving a massive fireball and all 6 passengers dead, plus another on the ground for 7 total. Then on February 6th, we had an Alaska Cessna Sea crash. A Cessna Grand Caravan operated by Bering Air Flights became a Bering Sea voyage after crashing 34 miles away from its destination in Nome, Alaska, killing all 10 aboard. On February 6th, there was a Scottsdale, Arizona incident involving a private jet, another Learjet, owned by the frontman for Motley Crue, Vince something. His private jet hit another jet, resulting in 1 dead and several others injured. And then finally, on February 17th, Delta Airlines did a barrel roll on the ground at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Toronto's gotten over 3 feet of snow over the last week or so, and honestly, getting home on the old e-scooter at night has been a bit of a dance with death, but dance I do. Turns out planes slip on snow too, though, and so a Delta Airlines flight did a bit of a barrel roll on the ground while landing at Toronto's biggest international airport. No deaths, 17 injuries, and only 3 serious ones. God damn, though. No deaths. Look at this. And that's where we're at as of today. So what's causing all these plane crashes?
It's the woke mob!
Theories abound in the wake of aviation disasters whenever it's in the news, because at the start there's really not much to go off of. Government bureaucracy moves slow and they have no care for clearing the air, and on top of that, especially given January, February 2025, what's going on with the United States government, I think a lot of things are probably happening slower than they usually do, and they're not fast to begin with. But again, theories abound for what could be the cause. People are claiming that AI is somehow to blame because they're trying to automate away the pilot's job and use AI to control everything, which if you knew anything about airplanes and piloting in the current millennium, you'd know that they've been fly-by-wire autopilot basically the whole time. They don't need AI. We already got AI. It's already automated. The only reason humans are there is just in case shit goes wrong. And even then, half the time, it's not like they're much help. But that being said, there's other theories too, like maybe it's hackers or the Chinese government or Russians doing it, which to that I'd say it's like a 0 day. 0 days are held in their back pocket of governments and other groups who have them until there's a good opportunity to really leverage them for the most value they can get. Because once they're known, they get patched, right? And the same with this whole airline stuff. If there was actually some exploit they could use to control and crash airplanes, they would not just be doing it for shits and giggles on random commercial flights. They would be waiting until maybe, I don't know, they go to war with the US and suddenly every single American flight nosedives at once. They wouldn't just be doing it to 1 or 2 flights for shits and giggles. That makes no sense. It's not that. Beyond that though, there's always the classic aliens, UFOs, UAPs, which I'm convinced is a government psyop. I'm convinced anyone that's a proponent of that theory is either the government themselves trying to discredit the idea of UFOs and UAPs by making it seem loony, which a lot of it is, or it's just useful idiots that are going along with it. Because again, there's no logical coherence to any of that. Think about it, right? You think aliens are going to show up here and just fuck with a few flights? No, that's not how that would happen. No, they would either do something big or they would do something in the background, shadowy, but it wouldn't involve just fucking with a few flights. Again, there's no logical, rational reason for why that would be. It's not aliens. I think aliens do exist somewhere in the universe. I don't think it's them doing this though. That's all minor shit. The real thing that everyone's latching on to with this round of airline crashes is the woke DEI. I mean, look at the DC crash with the Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac River. People were saying that there was like some DEI hires behind this. They were incompetent and only hired to fulfill a checkbox on a form. Oh God, there's a woman on board and women drivers, am I right? After looking into this Rebecca girl who was piloting, she was top 20% nationwide of her class. Everyone that has anything to say about her has good things to say. And so after looking into this Black Hawk thing, it seems to be a combination of things, right? On one hand, you got the ATC, the Air Traffic Control Tower. It was understaffed. There was one guy doing 2 jobs. And you see, it's one of the hardest hardest jobs to get on Earth. And that's a good thing because air traffic control is one of the most important jobs in this country. For example, you must retire by age 55 because it's proven by age 55, you have mentally declined enough to no longer be trusted in that role. Honestly, I wish more jobs had that philosophy. But hey, look, if there was DEI controlling the air traffic control tower jobs, that would mean that we would have enough people there, and yet we don't because that's not what's happening. Nationwide, there's a massive shortage because it's such a hard job to get. There's all these exams, you gotta have all this experience, and you must retire by age 55. Like, it's a job that's really bred to not have a lot of people be able to rise up through the ranks and join. And so with all that in mind, if there was DEI, there would not be a nationwide shortage of people in air traffic control towers. There would not be one guy doing two jobs because we would have enough people, they would just suck. But that's not what's happening. When the plane was coming in for landing at Ronald Reagan Airport, it was at about 400 feet. And meanwhile, the Black Hawk was supposed to stay at 200 feet. And yet, for some reason, it was way above that. It was 50% above that. Well, the reason why is because it seems like the instruments, the altimeter inside the helicopter was not doing its job. It was giving bad readings. You can even hear in some of the last recordings we have of what was going on inside the cockpit, there was disagreement over what altitude they were at because the instruments were clearly not accurate. Someone was pushing the microphone button as the air traffic control tower guy was trying to say, hey, go behind this jet coming through. And so now they're not going to hear that because for some godforsaken reason, their mic system set up so that if you were pressing the mic button, you can't hear shit. Dumbass design. And then on top of all that as well, right? These are two different types of flying. You know, you got the commercial side with the jet, and then on the other hand, you got the military side flying the Black Hawk. And on top of that, they were conducting a training mission. And so when you have the military and commercial flights going through the same super crowded airspace in downtown DC, basically, they're going to have communication issues and there's going to be confusion. And it was also nighttime. They were training on how to do night flights. And look, okay, you got to train sometime, somewhere. You can't be mad that, oh my God, training mission, they should had some more experience. It's like, well, when the fuck are they supposed to get trained then? Sometimes someone has to train somewhere in a dangerous scenario. Otherwise, we'll never have anyone with experience. Look, this is the trade-off. If you want people that are competent, you must train them, okay? Don't be like some big, large corporation just looking for the perfect ready-made employee to just walk in the front door, okay? Sometimes you gotta fucking make them. Even worse, though, 2 days later, that Philly crash, I mean, Christ, just look at that mushroom cloud. My God, that just looks like a fucking mini nuke. The big issue with the Philly crash is that it is odd, right? And because the National Transit Safety Board is under duress from the current administration changes, and on top of that, just their slow-ass bureaucracy these days anyway, there's a vacuum in the information. And so in its place, everyone steps in to say it's terrorism, sabotage, the hotels are doing some shit. Yes, and it's a baffling crash, okay? But that being said, look, it's a Learjet. It's not exactly a large commercial jet, right? It's not fly-by-wire. It's got actual controls. Like, you genuinely are pressing and pulling on the control. There's a reason that these are the type of planes to constantly go missing, go down, have weird shit happen, unexplained mysteries, some Amelia Earhart shit. We're going to get the voice data. In fact, I actually read earlier today that they did recover the final recording of inside the cockpit. We're gonna know what happened. The plane pitched down at a 45-degree angle, ran into the ground at full throttle, and as we're gonna get to later, if you look at when all of the crashes happen, the second most likely time for it to occur is during takeoff to the initial climb, which is when this happens. They're going 250 miles per hour. Shortly after takeoff, they were less than 1,000 feet in the air. Not exactly a lot of time to be able to react, right? Like, it's just, you're flying. You're flying. You're literally flying. There's a lot of different theories for what could have gone wrong. I think the real important takeaway here, the one I think is actually true, is what they call cinematographic illusions. And the way I describe it is this, all right? You ever be parked in a parking lot? Let's say your mom's in shopping and you're just like in the car and you're on your phone, maybe you're reading, whatever. And then suddenly the car next to you decides to back out of the parking space. And then you have this heart attack. You're like, oh, we're rolling. Jesus. You know, because it feels like, oh my God, the car somehow, the parking brake came undone, that we're moving. Oh my God, I'm going to die, right? But you're not, right? It's just an illusion. And that's a big issue, right? Especially when you're flying through the dark, choppy sky by instrument, you're not actually seeing shit, right? And now you have a bunch of other stuff going on too, like they had to switch radio frequencies for the control tower or something. Like, there's just a lot of shit going on at once. And, you know, if you ever tried to text while driving, it can be hard to keep on top of things, right? You should not text and drive. But that being said, you know, with all the low cloud ceilings, you're flying 250 miles an hour and all this shit. In the same way way where it feels like your car somehow started moving and came off a park, you also can feel like you're climbing when you're actually going down. And if it's pitch black outside, it's all cloudy, and you're going 250 miles an hour, and you're taking off and accelerating. So it's just all these different feelings physically. It's just confusing to know where you're going, what direction you're going, because it's not like gravity's telling you which way. You know, in the same way you get disoriented underwater, you can just not know what direction you're going. And like that car next to you pulling out makes it seem like you're the one moving. You just get perceptually confused. And that seems to be, in my mind, what probably happened here. We're going to know soon. And that's the key factor in all these. You give it enough time, it's very clear what happened. You ever watch Mayday or whatever? What the fuck was that History Channel show back in the day? History Channel Air... Okay, it was Mayday. In the same way where Mayday comes out and tells you exactly how every air crash happened once we got the black box and the cockpit vocal data, you know, given enough time, the truth comes out. It takes time for the bureaucrats to get off their ass and tell us what the fuck went down. And in the meantime, people just say shit. People are always saying shit. Speaking of questionable circumstances surrounding aviation, let's look at the Boeing case, because Boeing is a big conspiracy generator. And I don't blame them. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Logically, you think there's just this big shadowy cabal doing shit. You just hope, if anything else, you just hope someone's in charge here, but they're not. Boeing is a prime example of this, okay? Boeing, as you can see here with Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, for example, back in, 2019, there was a massive issue where the Boeing MAX 8 would have a 1 in 10,000 chance that one of the sensors, again, would read something wrong, and then it would just decide, oh shit, I need to nosedive now, or it thinks it's stalling or something, and then it would ram into the ground and everyone would die. That's an issue. How does stuff like that happen? Look, it's hard to make something sure, but Boeing has a lot of these issues, don't they? Well, what happened to Boeing is similar to a serial killer murdering someone and then skinning them and then wearing their face. Because you see, it's not really Boeing that's been doing anything, right? Back in the 90s, these fuck faces at McDonnell Douglas took over. You see, they did a merger, and then these MBA bureaucrats came in and ruined one of the best American companies ever. In MBA programs, they teach you two things about companies. You know, you can improve them by growing revenue, or you can improve them by cutting costs. You see, growing revenue, that's hard. It takes competence, skill, effort, thought. You know, it's just not something you can exactly teach people. But cutting costs, any fuckhead can do that, right? It's just numbers on a spreadsheet. And so that's what MBAs tend to do. They're all bean counters. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, look at this. I'm not even saying something new, am I? Well, it's goddamn true, though, right? There's a reason that it's just a known fact. You see, all the McDonnell Douglas MBA fuckheads came in, and they gutted a lot of things. They stopped funding things. R&D went down, and they started cutting corners. And look, okay, the best part about all these MBA shenanigans is that you can get away with it for like a decade, really, depending on the place, before any of the consequences rear their head, right? Because when that shit goes down, as long as you do it, you get the profits and benefits right away. It takes a few years before the debt that you've been building up through neglect must be paid. And so as long as you go in, you cut the costs, you get all the profits, you get to fuck off to some other company, do it to them. You can just keep lighting fires and running away before anyone catches you. And that's what they do. That's what McDonnell Douglas does. And McDonnell Douglas did to Boeing. And so when it came to issues like the door coming off, right? That is just simply they cut costs on the factory line and production, quality safety checks, because it meant more profits. And look, this isn't some anti-capitalist shit. It's just a fact of life. A lot of fucking idiots. As for the Jeju Air flight in Korea, again, this is one of the deadliest crashes so far this millennium. Basically what happened was a classic case of bird strike. There's a lot of birds around and they get sucked into the plane engines. It will completely fuck them, obviously. When this plane was trying to land, they were approaching the runway and there was a warning that birds were abound. And then sure enough, they got some birds stuck in their engines. And so they were forced to definitely land no matter what on that runway. Unfortunately, North Korea exists, and North Korea is very aggressive with South Korea. There's always the imminent threat of invasion, and so because of that, they have to make every single asset in the country militarily defensible. And so with that in mind, airports in South Korea are defensively built, including ramparts and antenna arrays to make sure that North Korean offensives can be detected ahead of time and defended against. Birds got sucked into the engine, forcing an emergency landing, and after realizing a wall was approaching, they could normally go up, but because they, again, didn't have any engines, they were, oh Christ, oh, it's a deaf person sign language. Oh my, that's so offensive though. Holy shit. Woo! Like I get why this exists. You know, it's inclusive and nice of them, but just Jesus Christ, if I saw some lady going woo as my family got blown up on live TV, just like that, holy shit. Goddamn. As for the drone incident in late 2024, that was a classic case of mass hysteria. And I know that's such a convenient hand-wavy excuse, but seriously, think about it, right? There was an initial report on social media of some weird New Jersey drones appearing, right? After Chinese drone companies mysteriously decided to randomly stop prohibiting drone activity around US military bases, there was a bunch of Chinese exchange students that allegedly were flying and observing and filming US military bases around the country. That was an actual drone conspiracy. Everything else about this, like the New Jersey initial sightings, back when the drone thing happened, you know, there's initial posts on social media, conspiracies started happening, and in my mind, you know, I have a drone. I thought, man, if I was in the US, I'd so be flying that fucking drone everywhere, just for the shits and giggles. Remember the surge in clown activity in 2016? That fall, there was a shit ton of people just dressing up like clowns for the hell of it. And I just, you know, walk around just as a clown because that's just funny, right? And so when I heard about this drone shit, I'm like, fuck, I wish I was in the States with my drone because I would love just to start flying that shit around. You know, same idea. That's what happened here, okay? The initial sightings, I don't know what that was. Apparently it was some FAA sanctioned shit, so they're all aware. Who knows? But what I will say is that everything that followed it, once it got traction on social media, that was completely just everyone thinking, time to go fly my drone and fuck with people. Because it's hilarious, okay? That's the thing. When these things blow up and you have the ability to contribute, it's just a fun activity. It's a cultural touchstone. It's a moment in history that you can contribute to. And you know what? I think it was fun. I think everyone had a good time. And then finally, the last specific crash I want to touch on today is the one that prompted this video in the first place. It's the Delta airline flight that did a barrel roll in Toronto here 2 days ago now. 21 people taken to the hospital, 20 out, so only one seriously injured. But again, remember, that thing really spun and burned. Like, that was a fireball. My God, is there a video here? Yeah, look at this shit. Yeah, here she goes. Like, man, just fucking look at that. My God. Yeah, holy shit. Oh my God, right? And yet no one died. Everyone was fine. Only one person seriously injured. Holy shit. Now look, okay, what happened here? I don't know. All that we know is that it appeared to hit the ground pretty goddamn hard, and then the right wing seemed to separate from the aircraft, and then it pitched on its side and it started rolling, catching fire. And if it wasn't for that all-star, literal rock star performance by the emergency response team at Pearson Airport in Toronto, like genuinely, who knows what could happen? You saw that fireball, right? All I know is thank their lucky star. Holy shit, they're getting 30K cash? What? 30K cash to the crash survivors? Holy shit. Honestly, if I were in that plane, I'd be pretty fucking happy, right? Not only you have a dope story, very interesting experience, but now you get 30K cash too? Holy shit. The stars have aligned for everything possible to make this a speedy investigation. The article even claims we should know within 30 days because no one died, everyone survived, and we have every single record possible. Now, that being said, I think, you know, if I had to speculate, I think the answer is pretty obvious what happened here today, isn't it? It's because the plane was transgender. Yeah, sorry, actually, I just realized I forgot one incident. And as we close out the video today, I want to bring your attention to the Nova Scotia flight, the one that our Chad and I got caught up in the aftermath of, right? The reason the plane crashed is because the landing gear didn't deploy. And the reason it didn't deploy is because it's a Bombardier Dash 8. And now look, it's extremely, extremely rare. But, you know, it is a rare issue that this plane model is known to have happen every once in a while, right? You know, that being said, though, there are a weird amount of crashes at Halifax Airport. I've always noticed that. Very odd. Maybe one day I'll get to have a fun plane ride like that, right? But anyway, the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I have one question for you, okay? Did you even hear about this flight crash? No, you didn't. You didn't, did you? Okay, maybe some of you saw the iPad Kid video on Reddit because that was funny. But, you know, none of you really heard about it because it wasn't in the news. It wasn't in vogue. Now, look, there was 2 major crashes just before, but it was also Christmas. And so unlike the end of January when you had 2 major crashes that killed people in the US in 2 days, you didn't hear much about it because people didn't give a shit. They were distracted with the holidays and New Year's Eve and coming back from Christmas and all the other things, right? And that's why you were hearing so goddamn much about planes. It's because it's the end of January, early February, nothing's going on. So people are primed to be perceptive of any crazy media story, right? What, don't believe me? Here's another one for you. Any of you remember this? Huh? Look familiar? No? You remember the train derailment in East Palestine, right? That was 2 years ago. I'm sure you all remember that, right? And then do you not remember the giant conspiracies about how there was a massive uptick in train derailments at the time in the US? When's the last time you heard about a train derailment, huh? You haven't. That's because after the train derailment in Ohio, you heard a ton of them for the next month or two, right? And then it died off. Why? It's because people got bored, right? Look, when there's a big flashy event like this, yeah, people are primed. People are like, oh man, tell me more about the train derailments. And then when you say to them, oh my God, they happen, there's more happening. They're like, holy shit, this is way bigger than I thought. There's something going on. But there's not, okay? It's just the media knows, oh, hey, train derailments get clicks. Shit, anytime there's a train derailment, I'm reporting on this because I don't care about anything except money, right? And so that's what was happening here. And that's what was happening with all these plane crashes too. Look, when you look at the stats, not only is air travel the safest form of travel you could take, but more importantly, it's been getting safer and safer every single year, basically. Every single year. Like seriously, they used to sell vending machine life insurance at airports for $1 million in case your plane blew up. And people would buy it because at the time, it was more risky. I mean, Christ, look at the stats. It used to be more than 50 accidents per million miles flown. Doesn't sound like much to begin with. But then look at it today. What were we at now? Like we're at like 1 accident per million miles flown. It's like 2% of how risky it used to be in 1960. And 1960 was already a way less risky time to be flying. Like, you imagine flying a plane in the 40s? Like, the accident rate was astronomical. And it's because we've built up and accrued all these different methods of preventing accidents and catastrophes from happening. And eventually, those vending machines offering life insurance for people, they went away too, because there was no point. People no longer were afraid of their plane just randomly exploding or crashing because it became much more rare. And so there was less demand. And if we look at the actual root causes of all these accidents, overall, by far the largest contributor is human error. It's flight crew doing something, right? Over half of all accidents are because of humans. The next most likely factor, about 1 in 6, is caused by the aircraft itself. Weather causes about 1 in 7 accidents. Maintenance issues cause about 1 in 25. Air traffic control is responsible for another 1 in 25 accidents. Like it says here, it's quite rare for an accident to be explained by a single cause. It's usually a chain of events that lead to the accident. It's a confluence of factors, and the fact remains that humans by far are the most likely reason for it to happen. And that doesn't mean that it sucks. It's like being a bank robber. The cops only gotta get lucky once. You have to get lucky every time. It's the same as anything. You just must always be successful. It's unlikely, but you fly a shit ton of people, you're just statistically gonna have shit happen. Remember hijackings too? That stopped happening because we stopped having a large amount of the population able to fly a plane. But on top of that, just especially after 9/11, if someone tries to hijack a plane these days, everyone on board will try and kill them because they all just assume, oh, we're going to be ran into a tower. No one thinks, oh, they're just gonna, fly us to Cuba and everything will be okay. No, everyone's assuming I'm gonna get ran into a building. And so everyone's like, fuck it, if I'm gonna die anyway, I'm going down fighting. And that's why no one tries anything on a plane anymore. I mean, like, look, even when you go on the, out of the loop type Ask Reddit post, it's like, what's going on with all the plane crashes lately? And everyone's like, wow, there's so many plane crashes. Wow. Every single time for years on end, because this always happens. If you've been around the internet long enough, you notice that this is just something that pops up every once in a while. Oh, I guess we're looking at boats this month. Okay, I guess there's a lot of boating accidents for the next month everyone's gonna freak out about. And look, these guys are very tired of it too. It's been asked and answered here repeatedly, like seriously, 5 to 10 last week. The answer is that 1 or 2 big profile occurrences which increased our appetite for plane crashes. That's exactly fucking it. There's no conspiracy here. It would be fun for there to be a conspiracy. There'd be something to talk about. If you actually want to go and see the true frequency of airline issues and incidences, go on avherald.com. Seriously, it just has a giant list of every single air-related incident, and you can rank them by severity here. Reports, news, incidents, accidents, crashes. And you can just see how many of them there are. They happen all the time because it's just a frequent method of transit. When there's a lot of flights happening, you're going to have a lot of incidents. It's just pure stats. It would be way cooler of a video, right? If I could be like, oh man, there's like some big government or like what, who knows? But look, if there is one thing you should avoid, it's driving a motor vehicle. Over 99.5% of injuries related to transportation happen in cars. And look, less than 1% of all fatalities are caused by air transit out of transit each year. Over 95% of them are car related. But that being said, of those air transit related ones, None of them are commercial flights, the kind that you actually go on. No, it's all the Widowmakers, the Cessnas, the Cessna that kept popping up here, or the Learjet type, the lawyer killer, the doctor killer, right? It's called that for a reason. It's because there's a certain archetype of people, which I honestly think I could fit to, where you get in, you think you're a hot shot, you know what you're doing, and then you just end up dying because you're overconfident. And so that's basically every single air death. As long as you don't decide to fly your own personal plane, air transit's by far, without contest, not even a shadow of a doubt, the safest method of transit. That is indisputable. And just to cap it off here, to be clear, you should not be afraid of any method of transportation just because there's a chance of dying. If that's the case, you have no hope. So with all that in mind, in conclusion, if you're afraid to fly on an airplane from, say, the United States to, let's say, Toronto, Canada, hypothetically, let's say this summer, I hope you don't drive, because I cut your brake lines. And uploaded.